Hello, this is Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue, and I want to look at voting and voter registration and ACORN and Karl Rove today, and try to draw some comparisons. And it's important to be afraid of the right things, so let's try to be afraid of the right things. Well, let's look first at the flack about ACORN, and it's been in the news quite a bit lately. Got a couple of problems. First one is this tape of them giving bad and possibly illegal advice to a couple of conservative political activists who are running a sting operation, and the other one is these voter registration cards that keep coming up that are invalid. Alright, as far as the tax advice videos, first you need to know that this was a sting operation that was done by a group of conservatives, a guy posing as a pimp and a woman posing as a prostitute, going in trying to get tax information from ACORN. This is one of the many things that ACORN does. And a couple things you need to know about this. First of all, in terms of how this was done, they went to several offices, actually, dozens of them, and the one that you have seen the infamous tape from is the only place where they got any purchase at all. And the other places they were shown the door, though they were so obnoxious that at various points, members of the other ACORN offices they visited had to several times call the police to get rid of these people because they were being so aggressive about trying to get a meeting and to try to get information and being leading about things. The other thing that you need to be aware of in terms of this is ACORN's reaction. I mean, the head of ACORN went in there and essentially fired everyone who had anything to do with the video and made sure that it was completely clear that these people did not represent the professional standards of ACORN as an organization, and that they had a zero tolerance policy for it. So, compared to like your typical business or government scandal, I mean, I think this was handled in a very clear, aggressive, serious way, where people were really punished, and there was no question, or any kind of mealy-mouthed explanations or anything. It's like, no, we did this, it was wrong, all the people are fired. And I think that's accountability, all right? So I have no problem with that. Now let's look at these registration cards, because I think this is actually kind of a much dodgier subject. I think, once again, it's something that's largely misunderstood by people. As an organization that collects registration cards for people, you are required, I think in all the states, but certainly in the vast majority of them, to turn those cards in regardless. So that means if you get one that's filled out Mickey Mouse or Mel Gibson or Goldie Hawn or whatever, you have to turn that in as an organization that's collecting these registration cards, because the government wants to be the final arbiter of whether a registration is valid or not. So once you've collected it as a group that's fronting for the government, you're not allowed to make an individualized judgment as to whether or not that's a valid registration or not. You just have to turn it over. Now, ACORN does help. I mean, they generally, if they think there are any that are suspect, they flag those when they're turning them in. And in fact, most of the ones that were touted in the last election as being, false registrations coming from ACORN are ones that ACORN's, in fact, flagged when they were turning over to the government to help the government say, look, we collected these, we know we have to give them to you, but we don't have a lot of confidence in these, and we think you should check them. So, in the typical fuck you for helping kind of way that our government operates, that was, turned around and used as an indictment of ACORN. So, there you go. Now, let's look at the other side of the equation, because, what was all this ACORN stuff like a smokescreen for? Because I think it really was a smokescreen. almost exactly the same time, you have information coming out about the conversations between Karl Rove and Harriet Myers, where she's talking about, or they're talking about, and making it very clear that Rove is deeply involved in the firing of the Justice Department attorneys. And one of the perfect examples of this was that one of the rising stars in the Republican Party, actually, this guy Iglesias, out in Arizona, he was fired for not pursuing a frivolous investigation of ACORN. Now, he was getting a lot of pressure. He mounted an investigation, and he basically came back with the decision that there's no there there. There was nothing to investigate, and so he refused to continue the investigation when he didn't find any reason to. And that is why he got fired. So, this is the kind of stuff I think you need to be worried about. I mean, worried about various rules that are being trying to be worked into the rules of like various states that restrict people's access to the polls. Like even something as simple as like, oh well, you have to have a driver's license. It's like, well, that immediately excludes everyone who's never had a driver's license, or someone who's had a driver's license lapse for whatever reason. Perhaps they're old and can no longer drive, perhaps they have a physical condition that no longer allows them to drive, whatever. And it imposes an enormous hardship on people who don't have perhaps access to transportation, live in a rural area or far away from the county seat or wherever else they need to get like a government-issued form of ID. And as the head of ACORN puts it, they shouldn't even be in this business to begin with. I mean, why should ACORN be doing this? Why should any outfit be responsible for registering people? Shouldn't all adults in this country just automatically be registered to vote? Wouldn't that be the sense? I mean, if the government really wants to be in charge of this process and in charge of vetting everybody, all adult citizens of the country should automatically be registered to vote, and that should be something that the government handles. Private organizations shouldn't be involved in it at all. And that would be the easy, logical solution to this. But instead, you have these initiatives in state after state which, try to improve the quality of the judging, of the voting pool. But they always have a sexy way of selling it. But each one of them is a correction for an imaginary problem. There is no problem with wide-scale, people voting who, aren't entitled to vote, either because they're illegal aliens or because they're trying to vote for a second time or whatever. People are aware of the penalties for this. Nobody does this. I mean, there are no convictions for it. I mean, check, do some research. See if you can find people who are guilty of voter fraud. I mean, it's virtually unheard of. And it's because everyone is very clear that this is a serious thing that will get you landed in jail. And I mean, it's hard enough to get people to vote at all, much less to get them to vote 2 or 3 times. So it's a correction for an imaginary problem, but it does have real consequences in the sense that people who are entitled to vote, people who would have the right to vote, are not permitted to vote because of these kinds of laws. And I think you're going to look at the grand scheme of things. You just got to realize that there are lots of people who don't give a damn whether you vote or not, and are trying actively to make sure that you don't. They'd rather you didn't if you were like, any kind of liberal or progressive or poor who's more likely to vote liberal or progressive. And these are the kinds of things you need to be worried about, not ACORN. ACORN is not a problem. I mean, even if the worst we want to believe about ACORN is true, and that they're filling out piles and piles of registration cards, I mean, that's all, it ends there. Unless somebody can prove to me that, armies of registrations that are filled out for Mickey Mouse lead to Mickey Mouse actually showing up and casting a vote for somebody which sways an election, there is no harm. And I don't know what else to say about it. Just a typical case of people getting worried about the wrong stuff, putting their attentions in the wrong area. But hey, you can always feel free to argue. This has been Zach Elliott. Have a good day, all.